Hello, coffee makers, not coffee takers. He is the master of cyber farms, Alfredzo B, Nash Jr., and I, the people's chief, Dr. Joseph J. Burt-Miller Jr. We are your hosts for the Cyber Coffee Hour. Alfredzo and I are products of Mount Vernon, New York, sharing our experiences and stories and sharing those of our amazing guests. We aim to share knowledge, elevate understanding, and foster a sense of belonging in this vast cyberspace. For today's show, we will have a coffee chat with Worcester State University Professor Mim Plavin-Masterman. Now, Mim Plavin-Masterman is a professor of business administration at Worcester State University, where she teaches management courses focusing on organizational culture and innovation. She co-hosts a podcast, What If Instead, with Alejandro Juarez Crawford, a show about everyday people from around the world reimagining how things work and tackling the obstacles they face. They consider the roles of technology and access in how, when, where, and if innovation gets democratized. She and her co-hosts are also working on a book called One Size Fits None. The book explores our reliance on top-down and unresponsive systems and suggests a different approach to fighting climate change, which comes out in the summer of 2025. In addition to her work on climate change and innovation, she studies how social entrepreneurs repurpose abandoned industrial spaces into public green spaces to make cities more livable. Professor Plavin-Masterman, welcome to the Cyber Coffee Hour.
Good morning. Thank you guys for having me.
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Professor, I know the first thing.
Formal. We're not that formal. We're not super formal. Mim is fine.
Mim, okay. All right, Mim. Your green screen is reminding me of like but behind the scenes of a Marvel movie. Like I I appreciate it, because I think I need to get one myself. But so you had this studio like in your house, like you do?
Well, no, this is my guest room, and we've had guests. Let's just say that. So it's this way.
Nice.
Nobody sees this. I just put it up, and I'm like, I can deal with that later. It's all good. Yeah.
Nah, I like it. So so aside from that, how was your July 4th holiday?
It was lovely. It was not 95 degrees like it is today, but it was lovely. We had people over, barbecue, friends and fam. How about you guys?
Same. I'm contesting with the heat. I'm actually going through a mental climate change issue myself, whether I'm going to stand out in the back and barbecue with this heat or not. But it's still the holiday weekend for me. I'm trying to, like I said, get over that, and then most likely light up some more fireworks in my backyard.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, can I see all your fingers before you start?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
President accounted for.
Yeah, but before and after, right?
Long fuses and distance is the key.
Okay.
Yeah, please be safe, especially those listening. If you're lighting fireworks, please be safe out there. Don't do nothing crazy.
Yeah.
As far as myself, I was just a lazy bum. I did nothing on the July 4th. I pretty much caught up on some Netflix. I watched the show Supercell, which is very good. If you haven't watched it, go put it in your playlist now. And also the show. Well, actually, I just finished now. The Man in Full with Jeff Daniels. Very good show. So yeah.
Nice.
So that was pretty much me. I did absolutely nothing. I tried to do as little as possible. So
Worth it.
That was me.
Yeah, excellent.
All right. So but we're gonna do something today, though. We have Mim here today, and we just gonna learn a little bit about her. So first, Mim, how do you approach teaching the concepts of organizational culture and innovation to your students at Worcester State University, and also like what key takeaways do you hope they gain from your courses?
That's a great question. So part of what I teach is that there's no one kind of organizational culture, which I think is a big thing for a lot of students. They're used to sort of thinking of organizations as all being like a black box. But you guys all know, you've worked places, the cultures are different. The behaviors are different. The kinds of bosses you have are different. The kinds of values that are communicated through what people say or don't say, or what they do or don't do, those are all different. And so what I try to get the students to understand is, how do you identify core values of an organizational culture from the behaviors that you see? And then how do you figure out if those cultures are fit with your values? Because what we find is, if you go somewhere where their values and your values line up, you're a better employee. You're happier, you work harder, you stay longer, right? If you go somewhere that's not a good fit, we've all been there, and you're like, oh, these are not my people, right?
Right.
Like,
That leads
you're
to
miserable.
attrition issues.
Well, right, but it creates stress. It creates stress for you, for your coworkers, for your boss, where they're like, this is not working out. So I'm trying to give them tools to diagnose the values. Like, are the values we work together? Are the values we do it exactly right, no matter how long it takes? Are the values we do it fast, and if it's wrong, so what? Are the values that we do it first? And a company's not going to have all of those values equally represented. So getting students to figure out which one's the driving one lets them figure out if those set of values resonate with them. So that's what I'm trying to help them understand. Versus, I need a job. Oh my God, please hire me. And then you get there and you're like, no, to all of this, and you're stuck.
Right. So, and I guess just a quick follow to that. Do you, so when you're trying to teach that concept, do you find, is it a relatively quick buy-in, or do you see like some students, like they try to, I mean, like, what is she talking about? Or, is there some sort of like I said, what I call a buy-in, is it hard to get there, or is it relatively, or is it easy?
I think every year depends a little bit on the students and their own experiences. So sometimes I'm really lucky and I have like former military members who come to school on the GI Bill, and they're able to speak to the qualities of what it's like working for the military, for example, and really show that as an organization demonstrating values, and that helps the students get in. Other times I have to do a lot of case studies, and I give them the tool to analyze it. We go through it in all different ways. I make them fill it out for their company so they can actually identify where they work and what kind of values there are.
Right.
But there are people who are they still want me to tell them that there's a best culture, which there isn't. It's just what's best for you. Like I tell them the answer is often it depends. And sometimes they don't like that.
Well, I think that's true, though. I mean, it will depend, because for one, every organization's goals are going to be different. So like what's a priority for one org may not be priority for another, depending on what their business structure is like. Like I said, maybe what products they're trying to push out. It's all,
right.
I agree. It will depend. It's not going to be just a blanket, answer for each one. So
can I ask, okay, Alfredo, I was going to ask you actually, what's the best job you ever worked at? Like what made it so great?
Oh boy. That's a tough one. So I'm a fanboy of the Apple Store. I don't care what anyone says. The Apple Store is probably the greatest employer during my transition from school to professional IT, because they kind of nurtured the relationship with the organization. They gave great training. They kind of make you feel good about being there. And then you had cool people that you worked with that said, hey, I came from IT, or I came from another retail space. We all level set there and became best buds. After that, it was a startup called Datto. I brought all my friends over there from the Apple Store, because I was an IT guy, so I never really had much friends. I was hiding in a data center, like I like to say. So when I made friends, I wanted to work with them at a startup, and so I brought a lot of my same friends over there because of the core values that company had, and I didn't want to work with horrible people. So I brought everybody that I made friends with to that company, and those were the two best companies I'll say to this day that I work for. And that's on public and private side. So I'm converting from the private sector, trying to go public, and those are probably the two best experiences I've had in my whole career. But I wanted to touch on that because of the core values didn't align between the two. So I heard you say that before. The core values wasn't making friends and having these cool technical relationships throughout the organization. They had statements and missions and objectives they had to do, and that stuff was called side of desk. So I learned that term, side of desk, as a core value when I got to a bigger company.
Right. And not everybody wants to work somewhere like that.
Right. And it's hard to get the folks that are skilled and, they're skilled on and off the job to enjoy their work. So I realized the folks that I was targeting enjoyed working in the Apple Store. So of course, when they went to a new company, it's like, well, I'm buddies with the people I worked with. That's why I trust this guy to go work with this company. So it was pretty interesting for me. It's a lot of pressure, but it was cool to work with my friends, essentially. So, yes, that'll tie into something I want to talk about, too. On your podcast, What If Instead, you explore how everyday people reimagine systems and overcome obstacles. What has been the most surprising and inspiring story you've encountered?
I think one of the biggest surprises to my co-host and to me is that we keep finding similar themes across the different guests. Themes like empathy, themes like understanding, like meeting people where they at. Those themes keep coming up. And I want to say, like, as I want to be like, I'm a parent with no favorite child, right? But I think
there are no favorites.
but two of them I think stand out, and I would say this. One is we talked to Rhode Island State Senator Megan Kalman, and she talks about the importance of having tough conversations with people we don't agree with. She's like, people sometimes say appalling things to her, and she's like, and yet they're my constituents, and I need to represent them. You know, they demonstrate beliefs that have like, she's like, I don't know how you can think this, but she can't say any of that. And so like, you know, having those tough conversations, I think that becomes so important. I don't want to get into politics, but like having conversations with folks you don't agree with is a big deal. And she demonstrates that constantly. The second is Dalia Najjar, and she teaches social entrepreneurship across different countries. And one of the things that she argues is we don't care what solution you find as long as you solve the problem, and as long as you're putting the problem first, not I have this amazing solution, let me go find the problem. And so I love that because she has the students struggle with this. They're like, I have a solution. She's like, okay, no. What's the problem?
Right.
What are you trying to solve? And so like that mindset shift has been, and she does this all over the world, across time zones, across cultures, getting people to make that mindset shift. Pretty cool.
Can you share those references with us? So you said social entrepreneurship. She does sessions on that throughout the world.
Yeah, I can put Dalia's information. I can send that to you guys. She's incredibly inspiring. Yeah.
Okay, and to follow on to that, right? How do you and your co-host select the topics and guests to your podcast? Like is there a model or algorithm behind that?
So there's no algorithm. It's just us in a spreadsheet now.
Nice.
I mean, if Riverside's listening in ITSP, we're very organized and very professional.
Same.
Yeah. But what I would say, so Alejandro has worked in this space for several years. He knows a lot of the people who have been our initial guests just from his work he makes a software program that entrepreneurs use to kind of test their ideas. And so he's actually been deploying that with a lot of the people who've been on the podcast initially, but then those people are referring people to us. And then unexpectedly, I'm finding I actually know a fair number of people working in this space, which I didn't think I did until I actually looked at my LinkedIn, like really carefully. And I was like, wait a minute, I actually know like a lot of people who would be really good in this. So shout out to LinkedIn, very helpful.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, how do you guys pick people?
Same. We started on LinkedIn. Well, I'll let Dr. Joseph go, but we kind of did the same. We started on LinkedIn and used our professional networks. Sometimes we do we did initially before we got our act together, we did like cold calls to the folks in our network. And then we made a capture form for those same individuals. Intake form is called, sorry.
Yeah. I'd agree with that. I think we leverage, I even still now, like I say, we do leverage our personal and professional relationships. Definitely, having to focus, of course, those within cyber, but we also look at those that are outside the industry as well, because our strategy was that we want to, when we talk about really trying to grow the cybersecurity industry, we have to be a little bit more innovative, kind of look outside the box and not just looking at going to the same conferences, the same type of people. Like let's look at those maybe that are not into cyber and try to find a common thread and try to pull them in. And also those who follow them, that they'll be intrigued because they're looking like, what is he and she doing on a cyber podcast? And then,
Exactly.
a light may go off on their head and say, hey, this sounds interesting. Maybe I'll give cyber a try. So that was the, I'll say the driving force behind how we got started and how we approach guests and how we want to really expand and just, really spread knowledge, throughout the industry.
I mean, it's so important what you're doing. Data, there's just more and more data all the time. So,
right.
like,
the latter is harder than the former. Folks that are outside the industry always say they never thought they'll be on the cyber podcast. And we're like, great, yes.
Yeah.
We would like to hear from you, but the
can
data...
confirm.
So that's
I'm sorry for just one last point. But even with that, for those who are outside the industry, cyber still affects those that may not directly work in cyber. I mean, especially those like entrepreneurs that are starting their own businesses. You are still unless you made it a point to not use any sort of cyber tools at all, you are still using an element of cyber for your business, whether you have a website, social media, whatnot, or make banking. there's still cyber involved to an extent. So you are still, like I said, work within those realms. So it still behooves you to at least listen and learn, like, what are the latest, strategies, tactics, the latest guidelines as to how to fortify your own business to make sure you're not the next victim of like a ransomware of any sort or phishing attack, whatever the case is. So, we've seen that too for those outside of industry, those that we've had on the show. They still appreciate, learn some of the tips and strategies that as it comes to cybersecurity, so they can implement for their own business, even though they don't work in cyber, but it still applies.
I mean, as you're saying this, I'm thinking, I can't remember the last time in an entrepreneurship like pitch document I saw a cybersecurity plan.
Oh,
of a startup. Like I can't remember the last time I saw. I'm serious, but like as you're talking, I'm like, because they're not. I don't think they're thinking about it extensively. No. The website, how do you keep it safe? How do you do all these things with client or customer information? I can't remember the last time I've seen one. I don't think I've ever seen one.
And that's a big deal. I mean, if you're collecting a lot of, depending on what you do, like if you're collecting a lot of client data, how are you safeguarding that?
Yeah.
And then, worst comes to worst, if something happens, it's on you. The person who's running this business say, hey, my social security number is now out in the wild because of your business. You could leave yourself liable to get sued and, things of that nature. So yeah, I mean, cyber is still an important element to anyone, whether inside, in or out of the cyber industry.
I think Mim touched on it too. I think in cyber, we're super data obsessed. I can't say a time that like there used to be a saying like, oh, software's eating the world. I can't see a term where cyber isn't that main element today in most startups. It's very shocking to even hear that there's not a cybersecurity plan, because all the plans that fed into cybersecurity to this time required us to be data obsessed. Your disaster recovery planning, your incident response planning, your site security planning, your business continuity planning, all that's engulfed in the cyber. Well, I'm cyber obsessed again, but it should be engulfed in the data that makes your company thrive and survive. What you hearing that was a light bulb went off. Like, why isn't that the first element and not the last? It should be the first element in most of these pitches, but that's just my professional opinion. I'm actually learning something now, realizing that it's not included in those enterprise planning.
I mean, it may get included like as investors come in and formalize and give them more structure, but it's not coming organically from the startups.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that ties into a good segue to your upcoming book, One Size Fits None. It addresses the limitations of top-down systems and combating climate change, which is, we got kind of to unpack that a little bit too. Can you give us a preview of some of the alternate approaches that your book advocates for?
Yes. So as a society, we tend to deprioritize local knowledge in favor of outside expertise, just in generally, right? But that doesn't really work if you have a very complicated problem, because the people who have this outside expertise don't know the facts that apply to you on the ground. And so what we argue for is, how do we open up innovation? How do we develop like real bottom-up skills to solve local problems in ways that work for the people who live where the problems are, and ways that make sense given what their constraints are. We're kind of waiting for the Google of climate change to come and save us. Like, probably not going to happen.
Right.
Right. Like, like I love Google, but like there probably is not going to be a Google of climate change.
That's not their core value, right?
Yeah. So, so partly what we're trying to argue for is like we've become very reliant on like these top-down systems that sort of solve some of our problems, but the systems are so generic that they can't respond to what we need specifically. So we really need to go back to this idea of local knowledge, like Jane Jacobs, with people who used to look outside, develop their own solutions. The process of developing the solution like lights something up within those people. It encourages other people to develop solutions. There's an infrastructure. There becomes like political support. People have more skills because they see solutions being done by folks who look just like them to solve their problems. Do you know what I mean? So like if I were to ask you guys, 100%. What's the hardest thing that you think of with climate right now for you?
Oh, I'll take that one. There's not enough local food in my area, right? Like local food source for like grocery stores or, fresh food options besides a big chain. That's actually what my daughter as well forced my green thumb, I call it now, because she asked, hey, can we grow blueberries? right? Because she hates them now because she ate blueberries most of her childhood. And then from that, she's now 7. She wanted a fairy garden. I didn't know what that was.
Fairy garden.
I honestly didn't know what it was. My daughter schooling me on these different types of gardens that she learned in school. So I went right to it. I went back to school to figure out what options are available and edible near me that I could do in my backyard. And then to the side of that, we have accidental pumpkins now, but to the side of that, I'm building out her fairy garden so she can use it.
I love it. I love it. And you, Dr. Joseph?
I'd have to say, sometimes I think it's actually probably one of the most basic elements is what kind of comes back down to like recycling.
That's nice.
I mean, so like for myself, I do part of my workouts, whether if I'm at the gym or sometimes I like to do a walk. And so sometimes along my walk, I see trash like alongside the road and everything like that. And I'm not talking about like little like, gum wrappers here and there, which is still bad, but it's not as egregious. I'm seeing like full orders of like McDonald's bags, just straight up left on the side of the road. I'm like this is it really gets, really gets me upset, honestly, because you see this, and then I mean we have trash cans all over, even if it's not your house. I mean, just throw it in somebody else's trash. At least it's in the trash and not on the grounds. I think, and honestly, this is something you learn in elementary school as far as recycling and things like that. So I mean, I think it's. Sometimes it's just kind of the basics, just relearning the basics when it comes to how we're going to really protect our planet, and these things do affect the climate, and also wildlife, because now you're leaving it out, it is gonna it's like a compounding effect,
right?
They collapse. Those systems collapse the more they fail. We grew up with Captain Planet too, so you got to remember, like we've been kind of trained to reuse, recycle, repurpose, repair. All those things we kind of trained on. I don't know if they're generational or not. I don't think we're there yet. But some folks forgot that. Some folks forget like you can repurpose that plastic bottle. Right.
No, it's true, and I think part of what we're arguing for in the book is that find solutions that make sense to fight the problems you're facing. So if you're facing a problem of drought, fighting your problem doesn't look the same as facing a problem of flooding. Like, it just doesn't.
Oh, I could tip this. I'm selling.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm for that. I'm for it. I love it. I just, and the book is out already, or it's coming out?
No, it's coming out next summer, so we're still writing it. It goes to the publisher in January. But to get back to your question, what we're really arguing for is lots of pathways to get to success. Maybe it's government, maybe it's VC, maybe it's local universities with their like social impact labs or innovation. Maybe it's all of them in different amounts. But we're trying to like feed so many things through sort of a VC pipeline to get to, this Google of climate change.
Okay, I have to tap into that. You said VC pipeline. I just learned what that was. So what's the product fit to solving the climate change and combat? Like, what is the immediate product fit for combating climate change? Like, do people really have that product fit right now and that market fit?
I mean, there are some companies that are really focusing out. There's some venture capital companies, like Lower Carbon Capital. They're really focusing on some of that stuff where they're like, how do we, decrease the amount of carbon being produced? How do we get carbon out of the air? Like, they're really focusing, how do we fix the problems around water? They're taking a role in some of those things actively. They have, I think, $2 billion maybe in their fund to fight some of that. So there's some of that happening, but in general, like a lot of venture capital people are looking for people who look kind of like them or have their backgrounds. And if we look at the data, 40% of the venture capital folks who are investors went to Stanford or Harvard. Like, those are great schools. Those are great schools. They're amazing schools. But those two schools that are 40% of the venture capital investors, like, that's just not a lot of diversity of thought. You know what I mean?
Even not at all. Yeah.
No one went to Utica.
I mean, not right, but you know what I'm saying. So this is part of like there's a gatekeeper piece versus a gateway piece.
Yeah,
who looks like. I mean, we could go deep into. You guys are data guys, so to give you some data, 80% of venture capitalists are male. Almost 60% of them are white male. 40% from Stanford or Harvard. If you're investors of color, over 50% went to Harvard or Stanford. Like, there's just not a lot of diversity there. Like, I think those schools are great. I also think they can't be the only schools where there are good ideas.
No, absolutely.
Right.
What about like you said, there's community schools, there's community level sustainable programs, there's ag programs at the
Right.
bachelorette levels, right?
Right.
Universities that are community driven. I mean, there's one I went to, shout out to CCBC. I didn't know I could use my coffee grounds in the soil until I went there, right? Soil
Right.
management class, that was a lab that we did to bring up
Yeah.
organic matter. I didn't learn that in university, and I dang sure didn't learn that in cyber training, right? So that data point is something that we tapped into at the community level. And then that brought me
Right.
up to the bigger ag centers and folks that, like you said, at the university level that
Right.
might think that's a data point that you should know that already. But most folks don't seem to know that.
So, Mim, do you think with that disparity in the percentages, do you think it's due to a lack of access or a lack of interest?
I think it's a lack of opportunity.
Nice.
I don't think it's a lack of interest. I think I'm going to be a little like corny, but the kids movie Ratatouille?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Not everybody can be a great cook, but a great cook can come from anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's not the mindset, but it could be. It could be.
So that chef hasn't had the opportunity to prove out the ideas and recipes in this space you're talking about.
Yeah, like to get in front of venture capital and make a pitch, there's so much behind the scenes work that even goes into that. And ultimately, you're only going to get in if you know someone or somebody makes an introduction. Well, right?
Isn't that status quo bias though? Isn't that like that feeds the biases of some of these models, like who you know, not what you know.
Exactly. So we like to tell ourselves it's a meritocracy, but how much of a meritocracy is it when you're really only giving money to folks who make you comfortable because you know someone they know?
Mm.
I'm just putting it out there that like it can't be the only pathway to fighting climate change. It can't be only the people that you know that have a climate change solution that will fight climate change.
Exactly.
Keep cooking, Mim, because you're schooling us. You're schooling us in the cyber side too. Like I mean, people don't think of the effects, climate effects of cyber, right? We just started talking about like the data centers, smart buildings, AI using a lot more carbon. Like all that's lost on a lot of cyber folks.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much like to train the AI models. The newer model takes like 5 times the data of the old one, and there isn't even enough good data out there to train the new ones. I mean, they're buying data from Reddit to train the models. Like what?
This is great. And then so Reddit has a data center that stays online. Emissions come from that data center, right? At Google, we just talked about them. Not shout out to Google, but they're spun up operations. They were in the cyber threads as well, saying that their emissions went up because of the training.
Yeah.
And because of the systems that they have to use. So does the book tap into those? Those are the top-down systems you're talking about?
Some of it, yeah. Like we talk about the push to automate and replace folks with AI. But to your point, there are huge climate effects from AI. The models are always on. They're always on. So what's that consumption like? Just from a grid draw perspective, it's kind of like it's kind of daunting. Even if you can find all the data to train the model, which is debatable. There's a huge energy cost to running those models all the time. So that's partly what we're arguing about. Like we need to make that less the main thing that we're trying to do to fight climate change.
So in your work, you emphasize the roles of technology and access in democratizing innovation.
Yep.
So what are like some of those key barriers to democratization that you've identified, and like what solutions you propose?
So the barriers, some of them we've talked about who gets to go pitch to the venture capital firms. That's a big barrier. But I think some of it too is mindset. How do you get people around the world to think they can be problem solvers? I think to take a step back for a second, I like to use the word innovation versus entrepreneur, because I think entrepreneur has like a very specific meaning where people associate like the guy alone in his garage with like the test tubes and, the genius guy, right?
And scientist in his basement.
Yeah. Like I think part of what we're trying to think about in terms of democratizing it, saying to people, maybe you don't think of yourself as an entrepreneur, but you're a problem solver. You can solve the problem in front of you. We can help you solve the problem, but getting people to take more ownership and not like be the driver, not the passenger in the car. Right. And so a lot of that work is using universities to get to the people who they need to serve, to go back to like my comments from our guest, Dahlia, meet them where they're at, help them figure out what's the problem, then you go find the solution. But I'll help you identify the problem. but you figure out the solution, giving people like agency, for lack of a better word.
And I think with that, but that methodology helps increase the efficiency of that type of work, because I mean you really get into the root problem, the root cause, like what is the exact problem, or not trying to guess around, as you said, kind of going in reverse.
Yeah.
You try and make all these solutions, but they're not solving anything because you're not actually doing the work and finding out what is the exact problem.
Right.
It creates the ecosystem of purpose-driven solutions, right? So I heard that years ago, and I wasn't a great software engineer, but they kind of fed that to us, like learning as an engineer, that there's a purpose-driven solution, not mission, right? We don't know. Most people on the private side don't know how to solution around a mission statement, a cap statement, all the things that make an organization fiscally sound, right? Because we get scared by that as engineers. It's purpose-driven solution that most of us are dying for. Even now today, like we're still trying to find, hey, can my software save lives? Right? Can my software solve a school district issue? Cyber only exists because those problems aren't being solved. I said it. Comment and say everything about industry, but I've been holding on to that one for a while. If we did our purpose-driven solutions, there would be no cybersecurity issue. I'm just saying. I'm not going to hang my hat on it and cut my own lights off, but I feel like if we did more research like that, we would have immaculate cybersecurity solutions. We would have solutions custom built for school districts, custom built for power utility, custom built for voting security, all these different silos that we still see issues in. There would be like a think tank around securing those sectors. And so I love it. I'm all for it. And the only thing is, smart people like working around smart people too. So the democratization of that innovation is, hey, what is he working on? Hey, he's got something cool over there. I think I want to work with them.
Right. That's right. That's right. And I think the second piece is when you put the problem solving piece at the center, you're also putting empathy for the people with the problem at the center.
Right.
And so for a lot of our stuff, like that's one of the big through lines in the book, is having empathy, of not like, look at me with my amazing solution. That's not the goal of it, right? It's how do we help you solve your problem?
Right. And there's no empathy in AI right now. Sorry. AI doesn't have empathy. So that's a perfect, pattern to look at. Like those models aren't empathetic of the constituents that it's serving. Right, to your point earlier, it's emotionless, and there's a problem in the math where it doesn't empathize with. Some people are hungry, some people are starving. Some school districts consistently get hacked because they're built the same. Right, that is where empathy comes in. That's a human-derived trait in the solutions that we need today.
Well, okay, but so even as you say that now, it made me think. But even with AI, don't we still have a control into that as to like what is being fed into those large language models? Is like, can't we have a say in that?
In the decision
to make AI more empathetic?
We have to write a model that explains what empathy is. We have to write a model that says these constituents have starved at this percentage. Right. There's a legit math problem. I'm sure if somebody smarter than me knows, but you can't train it on poison data says this is not an issue. If the consistent data set says no one is starving in this sector because we moved the ball, or we found a solution that says it's only a small percentage, then the model's not going to have empathy based on the math. Somebody has to go in there and design the math to say 40% of constituents are starving in this area because of this. And then the decisions made by the model, how do I solve it? So we could do it naturally, right? We have that natural empathy, like people shouldn't starve. But the model needs to know what starving is, by what percentage, how many constituents in a 50-mile area, right? Those type of conversations need to start happening. So there isn't a status quo bias or a cognitive bias to people are starving at 40% in this inner city, right? That's the. And again, I'm just brushing my chops on that as a cyber guy, but what I've seen, there is no empathy in the math. It's just 40% of people are starving. Go on that data. Not why, how, where the supermarkets, none of that stuff makes it into the model yet.
I hear you. And Mim, to your point, when we talk about like empathy and when we go on, so let's say like you go into like these neighborhoods or communities where we're designing these solutions for you, it's going to hit different because you may experiencing what like a community of people are experiencing, and you're seeing it face to face, what have you. You're within it, you experience it, you see it. So now it does give you more of a purpose to say, hey, I really want to help these people. I want to help this community because I see how they're struggling. I see what they're going through. It's going to make a difference as opposed to someone who's very far removed from it, And of course, I think the motivations will be different. I think a lot of times it's always going to be about money. I think money is always the bottom line.
It is.
But
it's unfortunately.
I mean, just being real. I mean, I think that's always going to be an element you can't ignore. But when you, like you said, when you introduce an empathy into like Alfredo, you said like those purpose-driven solutions, it is going to make it different. I think it is going to have a different motivation. I think a lot of times, even us as people, like we tend to do things differently when we have a stake in the game. Where like, so for example, like if let's say our own family member, someone like it hit close to home, now I'm motivated to really do this. 'Cause before I didn't really care, but now someone I know is affected. Now I'm learning more about it. I have more of awareness because my loved one is affected by this.
So that's how I got into cybersecurity. My family, so I was hacked, right? And then my family members were hacked. So back, a number of years ago, I worked at a startup and someone phished my dad. Right. And I said, it's game time. What is information security? Because we were calling it information security back in the day. But what is this means of phishing? I didn't even know what it was like 10, 12 years ago. But because my dad had got hacked and he got phished, I said to him, hey, I'm going into cybersecurity. I'm going to take cybersecurity that much serious, because I didn't know as an admin then that these things were happening. Right. And you're right. The stakes in the game is not that it's just happening in everybody else's backyard, because no one really cares until it's in their backyard. It's the community, like to your point, these local systems are interconnected. And no one seems to be thinking of right here in my backyard, all of these systems are connected and affected. Right. So that I like that community idea. I like the local idea, but I wish it makes it into the models. To your point, I wish some of these solutions that think about how we're affected as a community and ecosystem gets purpose driven to that ecosystem, right? Solve the problem right in your backyard. Right. Engineers are stuck in their backyard, and then this is a thing I just learned. Architects think about everyone's backyard. So I was in school to that on the green side. Like, why is it that we have this dilemma between folks to solve community problems? Like, there is a hey, I'm the expert here, don't tell me what to do kind of thing, right?
Right.
I really wish that went the way to say, regardless of your expertise, we're all impacted by the same issues, right? That's something I'm trying to catch up on too. Is everyone's still stuck in their own backyard as far as even cyber, right? Some of the cyber problems we're not thinking about as a community problem or a threat landscape like we like to throw out. The whole threat landscape impacts multiple sectors. Four of them go down, we're all impacted, right? There has to be this community driven and purpose driven solutions around it, because otherwise we're all going to be stuck. Even the non-cyber folks, this are blindside folks that don't think, hey, a ransomware could take down a major grocery. People ask, what's ransomware still? It's really unfortunate that we need to start driving the solutions and the cyber research to the community, for sure.
I agree.
I mean, that point about the systems, I think, is also very important, because it makes you think about how to solve the problem differently. If you think of the problem as being just self-contained for you, you're going to pick maybe one of whatever kind of solutions versus, oh, my effects have blast radiuses or effects in all these other sectors. I better think about them. So this, to your point, maybe you're bringing in people from other sectors, and it's more
Absolutely.
like a cross-sector.
Right.
Cross-sector,
so so it's a more resilient solution.
Does the VC pipeline consider multifaceted solutions like that, like solutions that could service multiple sectors?
I mean, I think they do. I think that's partly what they're interested in, because then it scales faster. So if there are multiple kinds of customers and multiple kinds of markets that can be served by the product or service, they're pretty psyched.
That's good to know.
So
Mim, your research on repurposing abandoned industrial spaces into public green areas focuses on enhancing urban livability. Like, what exemplary projects have you studied, and what lessons can other cities learn from them?
So one of the things I study is people taking these abandoned pieces of railroad and making them into rail parks. So green spaces they're really good for like decreasing childhood asthma. They're really good for improving mood. Like being out in nature is good for you. So one of the things that I study is places like the High Line in New York City, the Rail Park in Philly, the 606 in Chicago. They're all places where they took these abandoned pieces of infrastructure that were like rusty and contaminated and falling apart, and they made them these really beautiful things for the neighborhood. And they did them in different ways. So one of the big takeaways that sort of goes back to what we were saying before is the projects that work make sense with what the local people want the project to be and what the local people need the project to be. So I'll give you an example. Like, it's not going to be successful to be like, we're going to build the High Line in Trenton, New Jersey. The High Line is very specific, right? Like, it cost, I think, $250 million to build the High Line. And it was private money, like most of it. But you're not going to do that for people who are like, maybe we don't want that level of finish. Maybe we don't need the like super fancy granite steps and walkways, and we just want something different. So the ones that are really successful make sense with what local people want and how they're going to use it. I'll give you another example. High Line is supposed to be no bikes, supposed to be no dogs on the High Line. But other places like the 606, there's bikes, there's dogs, there's families, because that works for that neighborhood or those series of neighborhoods.
Right.
Yeah.
How does the High Lines, and I'm saying this on purpose, how does the High Line ontology identify similar infrastructures in urban planning and city? Like, because I hear it and I love it. I love the green space repurposing. I love the data sets around it. But does the High Line serve as the ontology or example to look for similar projects in other cities and mostly aligned to urban planning of these green spaces?
I mean, before the High Line, you had one in Paris that was just French in the best way, like, you know, and just and the High Line, I think, took a lot of thought inspiration from it. But I think in the States, the High Line is the ontology, it's the ideal type. Nice. And people are like, how do I make that in my neighborhood? So to their credit, they have an advisory network where they meet with people, and they're like, well, here's how we did what we did. And then they try to help people customize what solution works with you. What's the coalition of support you need to build? Is it political? Is it government? Is it philanthropists? Is it community? What's the coalition look like? And then try to help them build the coalition that helps them get this done, because these projects are expensive and they take a long time.
That's the projects I want to hear about. Not to get too political, but I don't want to talk about Project 2025. I want to talk about Project 2035, like something like that. Like these aligned projects that are community driven and sustainable. Right. So it sounds hella interesting to me that a green space could be repurposed and used for that community's ecosystem. Until now, I didn't know that was a thing. So I appreciate it, man.
I mean, I think one of the things the High Line does really well too is that it integrates across socioeconomic lines, class lines, and racial lines. Because you have housing projects there, but you have multi-million-dollar apartments there. They're all right there. And they do a really nice job of like bringing kids in from the local neighborhood to do stuff around the park. How do you do urban gardening? Even if your plot is the size of a shoebox, what could you grow? Right. Versus
apparently a lot.
Apparently a lot. If you're good, if you're not like me, you can grow a lot of things. If you're like me, my husband's like, please don't kill the things I just planted. So like, it's fine. And I'm like, I'm really trying not to. I watered them. He's like, you already watered them today. Please don't water them again. I'm like, okay.
We can tell him, don't worry. It's good compost. You know, the stuff that dies just goes in the compost.
I feel like, but a whole garden of compost is probably not a good place to go.
Right.
Well, a little too much.
Yeah.
So, and just to follow on that, like, so how do you see the role of social entrepreneurs evolving in the future of urban development and sustainability?
I think part of what you have to have, and I hate to say it so cynically, is you have to have a good story. You have to have a good story that makes sense to the people who live near the thing you're trying to build. And I think if you can do that, that's a marketing piece. That's almost like a PR piece, but it's a way to make the local people feel understood. And I think that the role is just really going back to like community involvement, get them on board, understand what they want. This is Dahlia's point, solve their problem. What's their problem around this thing you're trying to do? Make sure that, and then get them on board with it. So like the three big things are like, what does it look like? How does it work? Who is it for? And if you can get answers to those three questions, you can build a coalition to get a successful project. If you get, consensus on those things. And I think that's where some of the ones that failed have failed because they haven't been able to build that consensus.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
And it's hard. Like, just one more point on this. It's hard because these projects, they've been there a long time. They've been abandoned a long time. They've looked terrible a long time. And so you're getting people to have this like pretend future image in their heads and be like, trust us, it's going to be great in about 10 years. Like,
oh boy,
hang in there, right? That's a lot to ask people,
right?
If the story is not compelling.
Are there social entrepreneurs in the urban planning committees that you mentioned? Are these same folks going out and so I know of one in my area, shout out to the Waterkeepers Alliance, right?
Yep.
They kind of came in and solved a lot of, issues around water waste treatment facilities, contamination. And so I only know of that one because like I said, side of desk, I'm going out gardening and going to a lot of these meetups. But if I didn't do that, I feel like I would have missed that opportunity. Are there social entrepreneurs speaking to these same kind of groups in every city?
I think so, in varying degrees. A lot of them are like nonprofits, like 503Cs.
Right.
And so part of this is getting people to go beyond just volunteer community stuff and getting really like a professional mindset about how to do it. So to go back to your point, a lot of people just like, they want to go clean it up. They just want to go clean it up. They don't have a structure, a mailing list, a plan for how to get people to come help them. They just know it's a problem. And so there are people out there. The hope is to hook them up with social entrepreneurship labs or social innovation labs who can give them like a scaffolding or a base or foundation to start getting people to notice them.
Nice.
Yeah.
So we have Worcester State University Professor Mim Plavin-Masterman here on the Cyber Coffee Hour, having a great discussion. Definitely enjoying the time so far. So as we get into the second half of our time here, just learn a little bit more about you, Mim, and I'll just take a more relaxed approach here.
Okay. My homework's done. I understood.
Yeah.
Okay.
You could close your books now.
Thanks. Cool.
We've got the problem statement and thesis now.
Right. So, so Mim, how would you say cybersecurity has impacted your career, business endeavors and lifestyle?
So I think a couple of ways. One, I think I alluded to this with you guys earlier. I have a deep distrust of companies that want to collect my data because I think they don't do enough to keep it safe.
Wow.
And I've been hacked, and I've had like my credits all frozen and locked, and I pay for all this identity monitoring. And I feel like every year I get another letter from some provider that's like, hey, your data was in a breach. Here's a year of monitoring. Good luck.
Right.
So I don't know. I feel like it's kind of low-key stressful all the time with it.
I mean, I definitely just received one of those notices the other day from, I think it was for, what's the ticket? Not Ticketmaster, but the other one. Because they recently got breached.
Live Nation.
Yeah.
Well, Live Nation was one of the big ones too.
Yeah. Yeah, so I got one of those. So it's honestly, I'm almost like numb to it. I mean, I probably shouldn't be, but it's like, whatever, man. Because I think when you say, yeah, I'm just going to get the year monitoring, okay, what's that? I think more of an impact is, no, for real, I think more of an impact, if you really care, is when it does affect someone's credit score, like reverse some of these penalties, some of these scores to keep their score up, like whatever that impact it had on your score, because seeing it happen, okay, I mean, that's cool. I mean, I still got the year monitoring from the other company that got breached, so I'm still using that free one from that one.
Right.
No, like really, if you really make an impact and you care, like increase my score from that impact that it had, that when it brought it down, work with the credit bureaus and get my score back up where it was supposed to be.
Right.
I think that would, to me, I think that's a different approach as when we talk about, those who are being affected, fraud, all these type of things when it comes to these type of breaches, because it does have an impact. Where especially now we're talking about those who are trying to, try and get a house, which is very difficult now, the way mortgage rates are right now. Try and get a car, vehicle, apartment, all these different things that are dependent on your credit score. So monitoring, a free year monitoring just to watch my credit score plummet. That's great.
That's 100%. That's the purpose driven that we were talking about earlier. And to Mim's point, It is low key stressful. I was just hacked. I was going to do a separate episode, but I was hacked via Telegram. Telegram didn't send me anything, right? I had to backtrack, and my friends kind of told me, hey, someone's sending out messages to your Telegram, and I have like a little local incident response group that I didn't even know about. My buddies were like, hey, shout out to my crew. Hey, somebody's trying to scam us through your Telegram from an old phone number, and I didn't know that they were recycling phone numbers. So we'll probably do a separate episode on that, because you're right, it is low-key stressful. You always got to check your balances and see where's my existing data as well as legacy data, which, again, I can rant about these digital transformations and all these different strategies. To your point, monitoring is one of them, right? But nothing's proactive and nothing improves, hey, my data's out there and I don't know it. This have I been pwned, right? That was a great initiative. It's still around. I had to look up my phone number and email to say, oh, this is where they got me. Why are the monitoring services not purpose driven like that, to your point? And to Dr. Joseph's point, there should be a not deputization, but like an incentive to say, this keeps me moving forward. I'm not impacted by this particular breach.
Right.
But today it seems like everything is exposed. It's like you said, it's low key stressful, especially as a cybersecurity professional, because I got to look after my stuff, my family stuff, and the company stuff. Right. Everybody that uses these services, Snowflake included, because that's a big rant that I can go on. Where's Snowflake's initiative to say, hey, we need to contain this and get word out to everybody about these particular incidents? And, if you use Ticketmaster, here's an incentive to keep going to Ticketmaster because we secured your data, right? Because some people might not use Ticketmaster or Live Nation after this. Like, I know I won't. I have separate emails and stuff like that because of that low-key stress. Like, once it's exposed, it's burnt. Get rid of it, delete it,
No, it's all true. And to the second part of your question, in terms of how I use it at work, a lot of what I teach is data literacy, but finding good data on the web and knowing how to sort it from bad data it's another whole level of the cybersecurity. So I have students who've ended up getting viruses on their computers because they went to a bad website to get data for a project.
Right.
Because they don't understand. I'm like, and they don't know how to tell a good data source from a bad data source. So there's like,
and it's like
levels
Dr.
of it.
Joseph said, we're kind of numb to it on the cyber side. Like we kind of get that how do you say it? Lack of empathy. To your point, there's a lack of empathy. Like, why don't you notice? Well, maybe the word isn't getting out fast enough out of sector. Like we had another guest, Tammy, that said this a lot. We're still getting hacked as cybersecurity professionals. Right. So a lot of times we're kind of like, everyone should know this already. Why do we have to do another awareness training? Well, no one's going out of sector and saying the same things we've been saying for the last 10 years. So to your point, I believe the universities could step up too. Like, don't keep using the same solution. Educate the students to these are bad URLs and they're not allowed in our school system. Right. So there's a lot of that purpose driven that we touched on before that seems to be missing. And we're going back into the thesis. I'm sorry. But there's a lot of that purpose-driven actions that's not going on across multiple companies, and it should start at the university level. I agree. It should definitely start at the university.
What obstacles have you had to overcome to arrive where you are today?
Oh boy! So I went back for more school after college, working and business school. I worked for like 7, 8, 9 years ish, and I went back for more school in PhD program as a single parent of a small child. Do not recommend that for people. It was kind of brutal. Yeah. So that in terms of an obstacle, I think it was sort of the existential, like, talk about low-key stress. Like, I think I made $22,000 as a PhD student. Wow. That's a year. Like, that was pretty rough.
Yeah, that sounds rough.
Like with a little kid, so there's a way in which that was, it was an incredible experience, but it was pretty hard. And then coming out of the PhD program, all of a sudden there really weren't a lot of PhD jobs in a lot of places where I kind of thought they would be when I started. And by the way, the part of this is like just retirement plans didn't pan out for a lot of these professors. So they're like, well, I guess I'll keep teaching for like 10 more years.
Wow.
So, but I ended up in a pretty great place. Like Worcester State, we're serving a lot of first generation students whose parents didn't go to college. Like, I think we're doing important work.
Right.
They're unbelievably like flexible and nice. I'm like, hey, I want to work these days and teach these classes at these times. And they're like, that's great. It's amazing. But like, I applied to 100 jobs. I got 3 interviews and I got their offer and like a semi offer from someone else with, I hate to be that person, with 4 Ivy League degrees. Like,
Wow.
like it's a crazy market. So obstacles, like the hurdles to jump through, to get into this were, if I'd known, I think I would have been intimidated and maybe not even gone. So maybe it's better I didn't know how hard it would be. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, I mean, but even going through that, that hard process. I mean, do you feel it served you well, like to now, like to like I said, to just where you are now, just going through that difficulty. Of course, raising a young one, going to the PhD program.
Yep.
The uncertainty. I know even for myself when I was going through it, man, there was times when I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna finish this thing.
Yeah.
But as you went through that, do you feel that experience, hard as it may, do you feel that has served you well today?
I do actually. Like, I think combining a sociology degree with the business degree kind of explains a lot of the stuff that goes on in the business world, where you're like, they don't make rational decisions. Like, this is weird stuff. Why are they doing this? And the sociology gives you like another discipline to kind of examine it. And I feel like I wouldn't be where I am with the book or the podcast without the training, the disciplinary training in sociology, for sure.
Well, kudos to you. You prevailed. So first of all, that's you're the model that we can use on the episode for our listeners, that it is doable and you can be resilient and diligent to see it through. So kudos to you. I after all of the shows that we did, you guys make the doctorate sound so intimidating. I've only done three masters for the same reason of combining and trying to level up and hop around sectors, also with a little kid. So I understand, but the aspect that I don't think people are, what I hope that people dial into is you did it, right? That you're resilient enough, you did it, you can prevail, and I hope that sends a message to our listeners that like just keep sticking it out, because there is purpose behind it. There's purpose driven, and you're successful now. You're successful in your industry now. So I hope folks dial into that and say it was worth it.
I mean, I appreciate. I feel like it gives me perspective for students and their struggle. Because I know what it's like to be a student at different parts of my life, sometimes when I have no responsibilities or when I have other responsibilities. So I feel like that's like a level of empathy. To go back to the empathy point, I think I have a lot of empathy for students having struggled in that way. I also got really lucky and I had a great mentor in grad school.
Nice.
Really lucky. And she's amazing. Like, she's probably the reason I finished. So some of it is like, you just find that one person who just holds the door open for you,
Right.
So you still got to run through, but they're like, the door's here. It's right here. Like, so
still a little bit of a gauntlet there.
A little bit. But if you get lucky, I think we've probably all met a person like that in our lifetime.
Absolutely.
Who's just done something that's been like, yep, that just changed the course of my life. So
yeah. I mean, our friends and I have talked about this on numerous episodes before, where just the importance of having a mentor, in our career and in your life. And it may not just be one mentor, it may have plural mentors,
Mentor,
you have mentors that serve different purposes, at different stages of your life, at different stages of your career. So yeah, I definitely encourage, those listening to seek a mentor, someone to help you, to get you, a different particular stage of your life or your career. You shouldn't have to do it alone. Talk to someone who has the experience, maybe, gone through it already, and learn from them, work with them. It shouldn't be a solitary endeavor. Work with someone who's gone through it and that can give you the tips and guidance to help you get through it. So
100%. And they have the empathy for you.
Yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can't find a mentor in cybersecurity, reach out to us too. I mean, we're still out here. We're reachable. We're accessible. Don't feel like you can't, just because you haven't met us on the Cyber Coffee Hour. But reach out to us and ask some of the questions that might be in your journey, especially education. I didn't like my journey into masters, and I, like you said, I had mentors and people that kept driving me in the organization that I was in to finish. So if you don't have a mentor, you have difficulty finding one, even mentees, right? Reach out. We'll point you in the right direction. I mean, I think that's part of it too. Opening the door is twofold: one to open it, one to hold the door. And one to run the gauntlet with you.
But I mean, you guys are doing some of that, right? With your study hour and with things that you're doing in the cybersecurity space. I mean, that seems like you're holding the door open for a lot of people with that work.
Yeah. For myself, I definitely have the study hall that I run on Discord. Still going on. Run that weekly. Covering multiple certifications. So yeah, and that got started just out of necessity when I was still at DHS. When I first got into project management and just learning the whole project management lingo. So learn the PMP, and then and that's where I got started. Just trying to find those who are going through studying for that cert, and it just kind of built from there. And once we all passed, and it just built momentum, and then the community just started to grow to where it is today. But no, yeah, definitely to your point. Yeah, we all need. Like I said, I think community is important. Mentorship is important as we try to achieve our goals, like what it is that we're trying to aspire to.
So we're gonna lighten up the mood a little bit too, as well. Are there any hobbies or interests or recreational activities that you enjoy besides what you do in your professional life?
I'm probably gonna regret this, but yes, I play in a band. I play musical instruments and I play in a band, so I do that for fun.
Nice. So can you shout out the band? Shout out the band.
Yeah, I'm saying like. Say it a little more confident. Don't act like.
I know. I'm like
that's a big deal.
Yeah, that is. Well, can we catch the band anywhere?
I mean, so far we have performed for no money for people, so it's we'll see. But the people I play with are amazing and wonderful, and yeah, I have a blast playing with them.
What instrument do you play?
This is where I'm going to regret it. I play the mandolin.
The what? Mandolin. What is that?
Yeah, tell me more about that. The mandolin?
Oh no, you guys are like, I'm sorry, we have a recording error. Like,
what is that?
You guys like, what even is that?
Yeah.
So it's 8 strings, but it's 4 pairs of strings. So you play a pair of strings at a time. So like 2 strings are tuned to G, 2 are tuned to D, 2 are tuned to A, 2 are tuned to E.
Oh, you got to give us some recommendations now. What
is it? Is it like a harp? Or?
No. Think of like a tiny guitar, like between a guitar and a ukulele in size.
Oh, okay.
And you hold it like a guitar, like you play it like a guitar, but it's much smaller. Like
I was gonna say it's like those little mini. I think I know what you're talking about.
The ukulele came to mind when she said it.
It's a little bigger than a ukulele.
Nice.
I would say. So but it has a higher sound. Like you hear it in like, I don't know, you hear it in like Dolly Parton uses it a lot on her music. Like you can hear it. It's those like high notes. It's got sort of a jangly sound. It's sort of specific to that.
Now watch this. Because we're data driven and you just gave us an instrument we didn't know about. Now we're gonna hear it everywhere.
You probably are.
Right.
You'll go home, you'll be like, I'm gonna mess up your search algorithm constantly. You guys will be getting like Dolly Parton, mandolin, whatever. You're welcome.
Oh yeah, that's definitely gonna happen now.
Yeah.
I'm gonna see it in recommendations for Amazon to buy a mandolin.
Right.
Mandolin.
You will. Yeah.
And lessons on Meetup, they're gonna be mandolin groups now.
Oh no. Yeah.
Wow.
So I do that for fun and we have a good time. Like really fun. And I bake. I bring the killer desserts to the potluck.
What's your favorite dessert? Well, let's tie that to another question we have on the Cyber Coffee Hour. What's your favorite coffee preference?
I think I have to go with Yirgacheffe, Ethiopian coffee.
Nice.
Like so smooth, or maybe peaberry, also real smooth, not acidic. Like
a
couple of notes of like caramel, chocolate,
So Yirgacheffe, that's like I never had that.
It's
so is it like a latte type of?
No, it's from the region of in Ethiopia.
Oh, we gotta find that one. Now.
So
say it again, Yirgacheffe.
I'm gonna look it up. My brother-in-law,
I'm looking it up right now.
Worked in the region for years and came back with this coffee recommendation and got us all like hooked on it.
Okay.
So my mom's like, that's what I want for my birthday every year. We're like, all right, we'll go get you that coffee. Like,
wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
How about you guys?
So right now I'm doing Black Acres. I think they have a honey roast, right? So I mix honey into my coffee now to get off of sugar. Good. And I use Black Acres Roastery and their Midnight Train blend. And if I don't use that, a friend of mine recommended out here local. They're all in the Baltimore area. Zeke's Gunpowder Espresso, I think it's called. Yeah, it's pretty good.
Sounds
So
sort of like you'd be like that, like shaking.
yeah,
A little bit.
I'm not trying to mix two different ones because I heard that's not the move, and I got an espresso project in the back of my brain, but the gunpowder one is pretty strong. It's from Zeke's Coffee, and so I kind of keep them in separate jars, so I don't mix them.
Good call. Good call. Or like make them into cold brew, steeping it for like
Right,
36 hours.
right.
Like,
No, I'm not there yet.
okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
you don't want that.
No.
It's not what you want.
How about you, Dr. Joseph? What's your coffee this morning?
So for me, well, like my daily driver is an Americano. But like at home, I utilize my espresso machine. So I have the coffee pods, and the pods I use usually get like little espresso pods. I think it's called Ristretto.
Ristretto, yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, that's a good one.
It's something else. I forget the full name. I just make the coffee. I just throw it in. You know what I'm saying? I don't look at the name anymore. But yeah, that's what I utilize like when I'm at home. But then if I'm out and about, then yeah, I usually get, if I go to a coffee shop, I'll get like an Americano, black, no sugar, no cream. I call it foolishness. I don't put no foolishness in my coffee, just straight black.
No foolishness.
Yeah, no foolishness.
I have a coffee full of foolishness right now.
I love it.
So it's true. I'm going to start ordering my coffee that way at the store.
No foolishness.
I want lots of foolishness.
Oh,
lots of foolishness.
Full foolishness. Yeah.
Nice. So let's back up to you were touching on something. I'm sorry I cut you off. What's the dessert that you were talking about? What preference of dessert do you have, and then which one do you pair with the coffee?
I do shortbread sometimes because it's fun to experiment. So like a salted chocolate chip shortbread is really nice in the coffee. The saltiness pairs really well with like dipping your cookie in the coffee, which I kind of love. I also make something called a compost cookie, which has everything, like a kitchen sink cookie. So it's like got potato chips, pretzels, oats, graham crackers, chocolate chips, other kinds of chips, just kind of all in there. They're not round. They're kind of, lumpy because of the pretzels and stuff, but it's like the sweet and salty together. Also really good with coffee.
And you call that a compost cookie?
Yeah. It's not a Milk Bar like started it, and I just kind of like took an adaptation of it.
Nice.
So my kids call them trash cookies. I'm like, please don't call them trash cookies.
Sounds like a trash plate cookie. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I'm like you make it sound like I picked it out of the trash for you. Like, no, please don't say that.
Trash cookies with coffee full of foolishness. Yeah. Perfect combo.
That's pretty much my breakfast. No.
Well, Mim, it was great having you on. We had a great time.
Same.
For coming through. And so before we roll out, anything you want to share with our listeners before we end things?
I think listeners should just listen to all of your episodes because you guys are great.
Oh, wow.
Oh, man. You know what? Don't make me cry today.
I know. I'm going to try it. You're practicing my t-shirt, yeah.
There's some dust. There's some dust in there.
Right.
No. I think the work that you guys are doing is really important. Like to take cybersecurity and make it less scary and intimidating for people. So I'm very grateful for this opportunity. And rock on. You guys are killing it.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And thank you to you, those listening, tuning in to the Cyber Coffee Hour. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, share, and subscribe. Follow us on all of our platforms. You can find the Cyber Coffee Hour on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. All right, that's it. That's a wrap. We out of here. Peace.